Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Your support means everything to us. We'd love to know, which geographical location are you joining from today? At home? On the go? Share with us below. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, The Celebration. Drake Sullivan stood frozen at the entrance of Bellini's, one of Philadelphia's most exclusive restaurants. The private dining room had been decorated lavishly with cream and gold balloons, champagne flowing freely among the guests who were all laughing and mingling. His wife Vanessa's family had gathered in full force. Her father Norman Reed, a federal judge with political aspirations, her mother Marilyn, who ran several charities, her brothers Philip and Derek, even distant relatives he'd only met at their wedding 5 years ago. Everyone except him had known about this event. The banner stretched across the back wall made his stomach drop. "Congrats to our daughter's true love." Drake scanned the room and found Vanessa in a corner, radiant in a blue dress he'd never seen before, standing inappropriately close to Brendan Walsh. Drake recognized him as her high school boyfriend who had recently returned to town after making a fortune in tech startups. Brendan's arm was wrapped possessively around Vanessa's waist, his fingers playing with the fabric of her dress. Norman Reed raised his glass, silencing the room. A toast. When Vanessa first brought Drake home, I accepted him because my daughter seemed happy. But I always knew she could do better. Laughter rippled through the crowd. And now, finally, we have a son-in-law worthy of the Reed name. Drake felt the weight of stares and smirks directed his way. 5 years of marriage, of working himself to exhaustion, trying to measure up to the Reed family standards, of enduring their thinly veiled contempt, all of it culminating in this public humiliation. A server approached, expression sympathetic. "Sir, would you like something to drink?" "Water." Drake managed his throat dry. Instead of water, the server discreetly passed him a folded note. From Mr. Dominguez, the owner. Drake unfolded the paper, reading the neat handwriting within. "Mr. Sullivan, please meet me in my office immediately. Back hallway, last door on the left. Your wife and the Reeds have been using my establishment for meetings over the past 6 months. I have everything recorded. You need to see this now. Antonio Dominguez." Drake pocketed the note and made his way through the crowd. Vanessa spotted him and momentarily froze, guilt flashing across her face before she composed herself. "Drake, you're early." She extricated herself from Brendan's embrace and approached, kissing him on the cheek. "We were just about to call you." "Were you?" Drake asked quietly. "Of course." Her smile never reached her eyes. "This dinner is to celebrate Brendan's investment in Daddy's campaign. You know how important this Senate run is for the family." Drake studied his wife's face, the practiced sincerity, the careful distance in her eyes. "And the banner? The toast about the true son-in-law?" "Just Daddy being dramatic," she laughed, waving her hand dismissively. "You know how he gets after a few drinks." Norman approached, clapping Drake on the shoulder with painful force. "Ah, the other son-in-law arrives. Glad you could join us, though you weren't exactly invited to the planning phase." More laughter from the gathered family. Drake nodded politely. "If you'll excuse me, I need to use the restroom." He made his way to the back hallway, finding the door with A. Dominguez on a brass plate. He knocked once and entered. Antonio Dominguez sat behind a mahogany desk, his expression grim. The restaurant owner was in his 60s, with silver hair and the weathered face of someone who had seen much in life. "Mr. Sullivan." Antonio rose to shake his hand. "I apologize for the intrusion, but I believe a man should know when he's being deceived." "What's this about?" Drake asked, though he already suspected. Antonio gestured to a computer monitor. "Your wife and Mr. Walsh have been meeting here every Friday for months. Judge Reed arranged a private room for them, supposedly for campaign planning. He played a video showing Vanessa and Brendan in passionate embraces, followed by clips of the Reed family discussing Drake. How much longer until Vanessa leaves him? Norman asked in one clip. "As soon as the divorce is finalized," Brendan replied. "We've already transferred most of the assets. Drake won't even know what hit him." Good. He was never right for this family. The final clip showed a meeting from just 3 days ago. The prenup protects everything, Vanessa assured Brendan. Drake signed away his rights to contest anything. By the time I serve him papers next month, the family trust will be completely shielded. And what about his restaurant? Brendan asked. Norman laughed. The health inspector visiting next week is an old friend. One failed inspection, and Sullivan's Grill will be shuttered. Drake will be ruined professionally and financially. Antonio, stop the video. I don't involve myself in my patron's affairs, Mr. Sullivan, but my father built this restaurant on principles. What they're planning is wrong. Drake sat in silence, processing the betrayal. Not just the affair, but the calculated plan to destroy everything he'd built. Why show me this? Drake finally asked. Antonio's eyes hardened. Judge Reed threatened to have my permits revoked last year when I refused to host a fundraiser for him. My daughter nearly lost her scholarship when she dated a boy the judge deemed unsuitable. The Reeds destroy people who don't bend to their will. Drake nodded slowly, his mind already shifting from shock to calculation. Thank you, Mr. Dominguez. I won't forget this. What will you do? Antonio asked. Drake stood, straightening his tie. First, I'm going to have dinner with my wife's family. Then, I'm going to make some plans of my own. As Drake turned to leave, Antonio called after him. Mr. Sullivan? My cousin is the health inspector they mentioned. I'd be happy to make a call. Drake gave a small smile. I'd appreciate that. And please call me Drake. He returned to the dining room, taking his seat beside Vanessa. She looked at him nervously, noting his changed demeanor. Everything okay? She asked. Drake smiled, raising his glass. Never better. Let's celebrate. Chapter 2. The Unraveling. Drake spent the next week in a state of controlled fury, carefully masking his knowledge while gathering information. He hired private investigator Teresa Alvarez, a former prosecutor who specialized in cases involving corrupt officials. Judge Reed has enemies, Teresa explained in Drake's office above Sullivan's Grill. People who've been waiting for a chance to take him down. Drake's restaurant had become his sanctuary, the one place the Reed family rarely visited. The industrial kitchen and rustic dining room represented everything he'd built from nothing, after leaving the Special Forces and using his savings to create something of his own. I need to know everything, Drake told her. Their finances, their secrets, their plans. Teresa nodded. This won't be cheap. Money isn't an issue. Drake slid a check across the desk. I've been preparing for emergencies. While Teresa worked, Drake maintained his routine. He cooked breakfast for Vanessa each morning, kissed her goodbye, and pretended not to notice her longer work hours or the unfamiliar cologne that sometimes clung to her clothes. At night, he searched their home while she slept, finding divorce papers hidden in her home office, already signed and dated for the following month. A separate document outlined the plan to transfer ownership of Sullivan's Grill to Brendan Walsh's holding company after the unexpected health inspection failure. 3 days after hiring Teresa, Drake met with Antonio Dominguez again, this time at Sullivan's Grill after closing. The health inspection has been postponed indefinitely, Antonio said. My cousin sends his regards. Thank you, Drake replied, pouring them both a whiskey. Have you heard anything else? Antonio nodded. Judge Reed is planning something big with this Senate run. He's been meeting with people he shouldn't know, receiving packages late at night at his home. Drake raised an eyebrow. Political corruption? Worse, I think. The men I've seen, they're not politicians or donors. They're the kind of people my father would have barred from our restaurant. This aligned with what Teresa had discovered. Judge Norman Reed presented a public image of law and order, but his connections extended into Philadelphia's criminal elements. I need access to your security footage, Drake said. All of it. Antonio hesitated only briefly before nodding. I'll have copies delivered tomorrow. The next morning, Teresa arrived at Sullivan's Grill with a thick file. Drake locked the door to his office before she spread documents across his desk. Judge Reed has been laundering money through his campaign, she explained. Millions moving through shell companies, offshore accounts, properties purchased through intermediaries. Drake examined financial statements showing irregular transfers. And Brendan Walsh? That's where it gets interesting, Teresa said, pulling out several photographs. Walsh isn't just Vanessa's lover. He's been working with her father for years. His tech company? It's mostly a front for moving the judge's illegal money. The photos showed Brendan meeting with known criminals, handling unmarked packages, even one image of him with a gun tucked into his waistband. What about Vanessa? How involved is she? Drake asked, keeping his voice neutral. Teresa's expression softened slightly. Fully aware and participating. She manages several of the shell companies, signs the paperwork, attends the meetings. I'm sorry, Drake. Drake nodded, absorbing this information. He'd hoped, despite everything, that Vanessa had been manipulated by her father and Brendan. The confirmation of her willing participation hardened something inside him. There's more, Teresa continued. Judge Reed is planning something major. He's been meeting with members of the Saginaw family. Drake stiffened. The Saginaws controlled much of the city's drug trade, operating with relative impunity due to connections in law enforcement. A judge working with drug traffickers? Drake shook his head. Career suicide if exposed, Teresa finished. But that's not all. Remember Anthony Reyes? Drake did. Reyes had been a whistleblower in a corruption case 2 years ago, set to testify against several city officials. He'd disappeared days before the trial. The case collapsed. Reyes was last seen entering Judge Reed's hunting cabin upstate. Never came out. Teresa slid across a satellite image of the remote property. The case was assigned to Detective Miles Gardner. Let me guess. One of Reed's people? Teresa nodded. Investigation closed within a week. Insufficient evidence. Drake sat back, thinking. The Reeds weren't just planning to divorce him and take his business. They were dangerous criminals who eliminated threats. If Drake moved against them directly, he might suffer the same fate as Anthony Reyes. One more thing, Teresa said, pulling out her phone. I recorded this yesterday at Bellini's. Your wife and Walsh in the private dining room. The video showed Vanessa and Brendan discussing their future plans. Once Drake's out of the picture, how soon can we make it official? Brendan asked, his hand on Vanessa's thigh. Daddy says we need to wait at least 6 months after the divorce for appearances, Vanessa replied. But honestly, who cares? Drake was always just a placeholder until you came back. The pathetic thing is he still thinks I love him. Brendan laughed. Poor bastard actually works for a living. No wonder your father can't stand him. Drake was a mistake, Vanessa agreed, but a useful one. Taking over his restaurant will give us another laundering point, and he'll be too broken to fight back. Drake watched impassively, something cold and calculating settling in his chest. The woman in the video was a stranger wearing his wife's face. I've seen enough, he said, stopping the video. What kind of evidence would the FBI need to move against Judge Reed? Teresa looked surprised. You're thinking of going to the authorities? That's dangerous, Drake. These people have connections everywhere. I'm not going to the authorities, Drake clarified. Not yet. I'm asking what evidence would be required to ensure a conviction when the time comes. Teresa studied him, realizing his intent. Financial records, proof of meetings with known criminals, evidence linking him to Anthony Reyes's disappearance. Witness testimony would help, but that's difficult given what happened to Reyes. Drake nodded. I need time. Can you continue your investigation? Focus on the hunting cabin, the Saginaw connection, and anything involving Brendan Walsh's companies. I can, but Drake, what are you planning? Drake's expression revealed nothing as he gathered the documents. I'm going to give the Reeds exactly what they want, and then I'm going to take everything from them. That evening, Vanessa returned home late, smelling of expensive cologne and wine. Drake greeted her with a kiss and dinner, playing the role of the oblivious husband. How was your day? He asked, serving her favorite pasta dish. Exhausting, she sighed. Daddy's campaign is demanding so much time. Understand, Drake said, refilling her wine glass. Family comes first. Vanessa looked relieved at his acceptance. Thank you for being so supportive. Not all husbands would be. Drake smiled. Not all husbands love their wives the way I love you. Vanessa's brief flash of guilt was almost imperceptible, but Drake caught it. 5 years of marriage had taught him to read her perfectly. Is something bothering you? Vanessa asked, noticing his intense gaze. Just thinking about the future, Drake replied honestly, and how quickly things can change. Chapter 3. The Architect. Drake Sullivan hadn't always been a restaurateur. Before meeting Vanessa Reed, he'd served 8 years in military special operations, specializing in intelligence and psychological warfare. Those skills had remained dormant during his marriage, buried beneath his efforts to be the husband Vanessa wanted. Now, alone in his restaurant office after hours, Drake accessed a secure email account he hadn't used in years. He sent a simple message to an old commander, requesting assistance. Priority level, personal. The reply came within hours. Assets available. Parameters. Drake outlined what he needed: surveillance equipment, secure communication channels, and contacts who could move discreetly in financial and legal circles. By morning, he had confirmation that help was on the way. His former teammate, Kyle Morrison, arrived at Sullivan's Grill 2 days later, ostensibly as a new hire in the kitchen. In reality, Kyle brought military-grade surveillance equipment and the expertise to use it. "You look soft, Sullivan," Kyle remarked as they set up monitoring devices in Drake's office. "Civilian life treating you well?" "It has its moments," Drake replied, testing a miniature camera. Kyle studied him. "This isn't just about a cheating wife, is it?" "The Reed family. I looked them up. Judge is connected." "Dangerous." "Yes." "And you're sure about this?" "Once we start, there's no going back to normal life." Drake's expression hardened. "There's no normal life to go back to." "They've made sure of that." Kyle nodded, understanding. "Then let's get to work." Over the next week, Drake's investigation expanded. Kyle bugged Brennan Walsh's car and office. Teresa continued tracking financial transactions. Antonio Dominguez provided access to his restaurant's secure rooms where the Reeds held meetings. Drake himself maintained perfect normalcy with Vanessa, even suggesting they plan a weekend getaway. "That sounds wonderful," Vanessa said, genuinely pleased. "Where were you thinking?" "Your father mentioned that hunting cabin of his," Drake suggested casually. "Said it's peaceful this time of year." Vanessa's smile faltered slightly. "Oh, that old place? It's so remote and rustic. Wouldn't you prefer a luxury hotel somewhere?" "Actually, I've been thinking about getting more into nature," Drake pressed. "Your father's been promising to take me hunting for years." "I'll talk to Daddy about it," Vanessa said, clearly uncomfortable. "But he's very particular about that property." Drake nodded, noting her reaction. "No rush. Just a thought." That night, after Vanessa fell asleep, Drake received an encrypted message from Teresa, located Reyes's vehicle, submerged in lake 3 miles from cabin, sending coordinates. The pieces were falling into place, but Drake needed more, concrete proof that would destroy the Reeds completely. The opportunity came unexpectedly. Vanessa announced a weekend trip to New York with her mother for a charity event. "It's last minute, I know," she apologized, "but this could be huge for Daddy's campaign." Drake expressed appropriate disappointment while internally celebrating the opening. As soon as Vanessa left, he contacted Kyle. "We have 48 hours. Time to visit the cabin." Kyle arrived with a third man, Martin Diaz, a forensic specialist who had worked with them overseas. "This is highly illegal," Martin warned as they loaded equipment into Kyle's SUV. "Breaking into a federal judge's property. The cabin's in his wife's name," Drake corrected. "Technically, we're breaking into Marilyn Reed's property." Martin rolled his eyes. "Oh, well, that makes it completely fine then." The 3-hour drive to the Poconos passed in focused silence. The cabin sat on 20 acres of wooded land, accessible only by a private road. Kyle parked a mile away, and they approached on foot, using thermal imaging to confirm the property was empty. The security system was sophisticated but not military-grade. Martin bypassed it within 15 minutes, granting them access without triggering alarms. "We have 4 hours before the system automatically pings for verification," Martin explained. After that, security company calls the owner. The cabin's rustic exterior belied its luxurious interior. Expensive furniture, state-of-the-art entertainment system, fully stocked bar. Drake moved methodically through the space, photographing everything while Kyle placed surveillance devices in strategic locations. "Check this out," Martin called from the study. He was examining the bookshelf, which had tiny scratches at one edge. Classic concealment technique. Together, they located and triggered the hidden mechanism, revealing a secret room behind the bookcase. Inside, they found a computer, file cabinets, and a safe. "I need time with this," Martin said, connecting equipment to the computer. While Martin worked, Drake and Kyle searched the rest of the cabin. In the basement, Kyle discovered irregularities in the concrete floor. Recently poured, he noted, tapping different sections. "This area sounds different." Drake examined the space, noting its location relative to the rest of the cabin. "We need ground-penetrating radar. Can your equipment handle that?" Kyle nodded grimly. "But if we find what I think we'll find, we're venturing into territory beyond simple revenge, Drake." "I know." The radar confirmed their suspicions. Something large was buried beneath the concrete. They took detailed readings, but left the floor intact. Disturbing, it would alert the reads. Meanwhile, Martin had cracked the computer security. "You need to see this," he called. The files contained explicit evidence of Judge Reed's criminal activities, ledgers of bribes accepted, photos of meetings with organized crime figures, and video files. Drake opened one video and immediately wished he hadn't. It showed Judge Reed and Brendan Walsh interrogating a man Drake recognized as Anthony Reyes. The whistleblower was bound to a chair in the very room where they now stood. "This goes beyond corruption," Martin murmured, looking ill. "This is murder." Drake watched enough to confirm Reyes's fate, then copied all files to an encrypted drive. "We have what we need." They restored the room to its original state and departed with 2 hours to spare, leaving no trace of their presence except the carefully hidden surveillance equipment. Back in Philadelphia, Drake reviewed the evidence with Teresa. "This is enough to put Reed away for life," she confirmed. "Multiple homicides, racketeering, corruption, obstruction of justice. And Brendan Walsh is implicated in everything," Drake added. As is Philip Reed, the older brother. "What about Vanessa?" Teresa asked cautiously. Drake played a video file showing Vanessa at the cabin, bringing food and drinks while Reyes was held captive in the next room. She wasn't directly involved in the violence, but clearly knew what was happening. "She's complicit," Drake said quietly. "They all are." Teresa studied him. "So what's the plan? FBI? Justice Department?" "Not yet," Drake replied. "The Reeds have people everywhere. If we move too soon, evidence will disappear, witnesses will recant or vanish, and nothing will stick. We need to be smarter." Drake outlined his strategy. Continue gathering evidence while appearing oblivious. Wait for the Reeds to make their move against him, then strike when they were most vulnerable. "The Senate announcement is in 3 weeks, Drake explained. "Norman Reed will be at the height of his public exposure. That when we hit them all at once from multiple angles with irrefutable evidence." "That's risky," Teresa cautioned. "They're planning to destroy you before then." "Let them try," Drake said with cold certainty. "Everything they think they know about me is a lie. It's time they learned who they're really dealing with." That night, alone in his restaurant kitchen, Drake prepared a complex dish, a habit that helped him think. As he methodically reduced the sauce, his phone buzzed with a message from Kyle. "Movement at cabin. Judge plus BW arrived 20 minutes ago." The monitoring devices they planted were transmitting. Drake connected his phone to a speaker and listened as Norman Reed and Brendan Walsh discussed their plans. "The health inspection is back on for Sullivan's restaurant," Judge Reed was saying. "My contact confirmed it. By this time next week, Drake will be facing closure and financial ruin." "And then Vanessa serves him divorce papers?" Brendan asked. "Precisely. She's already moved most of their liquid assets. He'll be left with nothing but debt and a ruined reputation. What if he fights back? Contests the divorce?" Judge Reed's laugh was chilling. "Let him try. No one challenges my family and wins, Brendan. No one." Drake turned off the audio, his path now clear. The Reeds had underestimated him, seeing only what he had allowed them to see. A hard-working restaurateur trying to please his wife's family. They would soon discover they had invited a wolf into their home, believing it to be a sheep. Chapter 4. The Gathering Storm. On Monday morning, Drake received the official notice. Health inspection scheduled for Sullivan's Grill, Wednesday at 10 a.m. 2 days to prepare for an inspection designed to shut him down. He called his head chef, Miguel Santos, into his office. "We're going to have company on Wednesday," Drake explained, showing him the notice. "This won't be a normal inspection." Miguel, who had worked with Drake since the restaurant's opening, nodded grimly. "They're coming to find problems, not ensure safety." "Exactly. So let's make sure there's nothing to find." Drake handed him a list. "I need these upgrades implemented immediately. Spare no expense." Miguel whistled at the equipment costs. "Boss, this is over $20,000. Consider it an investment in our future," Drake replied. "And Miguel, keep this quiet. Just tell the staff we're upgrading." Drake's next call was to Kyle, who arrived with specialized equipment to sweep the restaurant for surveillance devices. They found 3, one in Drake's office, one in the main dining area, and one in the kitchen. "Professional placement," Kyle noted, examining one without removing it. "Recent, too." Drake nodded. "Leave them. I want them to think their plan is working." While Kyle worked, Drake met with his lawyer, Sophia Bennett, a stern woman who had once sued Judge Reed and held a personal grudge against him. "These divorce papers are egregious," Sophia said, reviewing the documents Drake had found in Vanessa's office. "She's claiming everything. The restaurant, your savings, even personal property you owned before marriage." "Can she get it?" Drake asked. "Not legitimately, no, but with her father's influence." Sophia trailed off. "I understand. I need you to prepare counterfilings, but don't submit anything yet. When Vanessa serves me, I want to be ready to respond immediately." Sophia studied him curiously. "You seem remarkably calm for someone about to lose everything." Drake smiled thinly. "Who says I'm going to lose?" That evening, Drake invited Antonio Dominguez to Sullivan's Grill for dinner. The older man looked worried. "My sources say Judge Reed is making moves against you," Antonio said quietly. "The health inspector is his personal friend, Herbert Grossman. Nothing will pass his inspection." "I'm counting on that," Drake replied, serving Antonio a perfect filet mignon. "In fact, I'm going to make it easy for him to find violations." Antonio looked confused. "You want to fail the inspection?" "I want them confident in their victory," Drake explained. "When people believe they've won, they get careless." Antonio nodded slowly. "You're a surprising man, Mr. Sullivan. What can I do to help?" "Continue allowing them to use your restaurant for meetings. I need their conversations recorded." Drake paused. "And I need one more favor. Your cousin Rico, the legitimate health inspector, can he perform an official inspection tomorrow before Grossman arrives?" "Of course. But what good will that do if Grossman is determined to shut you down?" Drake's smile was predatory. "Documentation. Evidence of bad faith when we need it." The following day, Rico Dominguez conducted a thorough inspection of Sullivan's Grill, documenting its impeccable condition with photos and a signed report. Drake thanked him and immediately implemented Phase 2, subtly altering specific areas of the restaurant to create apparent violations that would be discovered the next day. Meanwhile, Kyle reported that the cabin surveillance had captured another disturbing conversation between Judge Reed and Brendan Walsh. "The Saginaw deal closes after my Senate announcement," Reed said. $20 million funneled through your tech companies, then offshore. The construction contracts for the waterfront development will be awarded within days." "And our cut?" Brendan asked. $5 million each, completely untraceable. "But first we clean house. Anyone who knows too much becomes a liability." Drake listened grimly. The Reeds weren't just corrupt. They were planning something that would affect the entire city, involving one of Philadelphia's most notorious crime families. That night, Vanessa returned home later than usual, tension evident in her movements. Drake greeted her with a glass of wine and calm inquiries about her day. "You seem stressed," he observed, massaging her shoulders. Vanessa relaxed slightly under his touch. "Just campaign pressures. Daddy's announcement is so close, and everything needs to be perfect." "You've always managed your father's events beautifully," Drake assured her. "This will be no different." Vanessa turned to him, studying his face. "You've been different lately? More attentive. Have I been neglectful before?" Drake asked innocently. "No, it's just—" She hesitated. You know I love you, right? The lie came easily to her lips, and Drake marveled at how he'd once believed her capacity for devotion. Now he recognized the calculation behind her eyes, the slight tension in her smile. Of course, he replied, kissing her forehead. And I love you. Nothing will ever change that. Later, as Vanessa slept, Drake contacted Teresa. I need everything you have on Herbert Grossman, the health inspector working for Reed. Teresa's information arrived by morning. Grossman had received multiple payments from shell companies linked to Judge Reed on a vacation property purchased well beyond his official salary, and had conducted suspicious inspections against Reed's political opponents. Drake forwarded this information to Sophia with instructions to hold it in reserve. Wednesday arrived, and with it, Herbert Grossman, a balding man with an officious manner and small, suspicious eyes. Drake greeted him warmly. Mr. Grossman, welcome to Sullivan's Grill. We're honored to have such a thorough inspection today. Grossman barely acknowledged him, beginning his examination with clear prejudice. Drake watched as the man ignored spotless areas and lingered over the subtle issues Drake had created. A broken tile in a corner, slightly misaligned refrigerator temperatures, minor labeling discrepancies. Miguel played his part perfectly, appearing nervous and making small mistakes under Grossman's scrutiny. By the end of the 3-hour inspection, Grossman's clipboard was filled with violations. This is unacceptable, Grossman declared, clearly pleased with himself. Significant health code violations require immediate closure, pending remediation. Drake adopted a devastated expression. Closure? But we have reservations tonight. Important clients. Not my problem, Grossman smirked, producing official closure notices. You can appeal, of course, but the process takes weeks. I'll need your keys. Drake surrendered his keys with apparent reluctance, watching as Grossman placed closure notices on the front doors. As soon as Grossman left, Drake called an emergency staff meeting. I know this looks bad, he told his concerned employees, but I'm asking you to trust me. Everyone will receive full pay during our closure. This is temporary. After reassuring his staff, Drake met Kyle in the back alley. Phase 1 complete, Drake confirmed. They'll think they've won the first battle. Kyle handed him surveillance photos of Brendan Walsh entering Vanessa's office building that morning. They're moving faster now. Your wife withdrew another $50,000 from your joint account today. Drake nodded. Perfect. Time for Phase 2. That evening, Drake returned home to find Vanessa waiting with forced sympathy. Drake, I heard about the restaurant. I'm so sorry. It's a disaster, Drake said, allowing genuine seeming distress to show. All those violations, I don't understand how it happened. Vanessa hugged him, her body tense against his. Maybe it's a sign, sweetheart. Maybe the restaurant was never meant to be your path. Drake pulled back, looking confused. What do you mean? Well, Vanessa began carefully. You've put so much into that place, worked so many hours. Perhaps this is an opportunity to try something new. Daddy always said you'd be better suited to other pursuits. Your father never believed in me, Drake said bitterly. That's not true, Vanessa lied smoothly. He just wants what's best for both of us. Drake turned away, shoulders slumped in apparent defeat. I don't know what I'm going to do. The appeal process could take weeks, and our savings. Vanessa hesitated. About that, I've been meaning to talk to you about our finances. Drake looked up, feigning ignorance. What about them? I made some investments recently. For our future. Vanessa couldn't quite meet his eyes. Some of our savings had to be moved. Moved where? Drake asked, voice rising. Vanessa, we need that money now. It's complicated, she countered, her voice hardening slightly. Financial matters were never your strength, Drake. I did what was necessary. Drake paced the room, displaying the anger and confusion she expected. I need to think. I'm going out. Where? Vanessa asked sharply. Does it matter? Drake snapped, grabbing his keys. My restaurant is closed. Our savings are gone. I need air. He drove to a bar across town, where Teresa waited in a corner booth with fresh information. Grossman filed the official closure report, she confirmed. Judge Reed made 3 calls immediately after, including one to Brendan Walsh. They're celebrating. Drake nodded, unsurprised. And the other pieces? In motion. The banking documents you requested are ready. Martin confirmed the evidence from the cabin is securely backed up in 3 locations. Good. Tomorrow, Vanessa will likely serve me divorce papers. When she does, everything accelerates. Teresa looked concerned. Drake, these people have killed to protect themselves. Are you sure about this approach? Drake's expression was cold and focused. The Reeds think they're hunters. They're about to discover their prey. Chapter 5, The Gambit. The divorce papers arrived with breakfast the next morning. Vanessa placed them beside Drake's coffee cup, her expression a practiced mix of regret and resolution. I didn't want it to come to this, she said, voice steady. But with the restaurant failing, your recent mood swings, we've grown apart, Drake. Drake stared at the documents, then at his wife. 5 years of marriage, and you serve me papers over breakfast? I'm trying to be civilized, Vanessa replied. My lawyer says this arrangement is more than fair. Drake skimmed the papers, noting the expected one-sided terms. Vanessa would retain their home, investments, and receive alimony despite her family's wealth. Drake would assume all debts associated with the now-closed restaurant. Fair. Drake laughed bitterly. You're taking everything and leaving me with nothing. You signed the prenup, Vanessa reminded him coldly. Besides, I'm being generous considering your limitations. Drake's jaw tightened. Limitations? Let's be honest, Drake. You never fit in my world. Daddy tried to help you, offered you positions in his company's connections that could have made you something. Instead, you insisted on that little restaurant, working with your hands like some. She hesitated, disdain evident, common laborer. The mask had finally dropped, revealing the contempt she'd hidden during their marriage. I see, Drake said quietly. And Brendan Walsh fits better into your world, I suppose. Vanessa flinched slightly. What does Brendan have to do with this? Please, Drake scoffed. The true son-in-law celebration? The late nights? The cologne on your clothes? I'm not blind, Vanessa. Vanessa composed herself. Brendan is a family friend who understands our world. Whatever you're implying is your insecurity talking. And the money you've been moving from our accounts? That's just insecurity too. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. I protected our assets while you drove your business into the ground. You should be grateful. Drake stood slowly. I'll have my lawyer review these papers. Don't bother fighting this, Vanessa warned. Daddy has already spoken with Judge Hamilton. The divorce will proceed regardless. Drake gathered the papers without another word and left the house. In his car, he immediately called Sophia. She served the papers, mentioned that her father has spoken with Judge Hamilton. Sophia sighed. Hamilton is deep in Reed's pocket. We'll need to file for a different judge immediately. Do it, Drake instructed, and implement the financial countermeasures. His next call was to Kyle. It's time. Activate everything. While Drake had appeared to be spiraling into defeat, he had been methodically preparing his counterattack. The first move came 3 hours later, when Vanessa received an urgent call from her bank. Mrs. Sullivan? This is Charles Winthrop from First National Trust. There's been unusual activity on your accounts that requires immediate verification. Vanessa arrived at the bank to discover she'd been locked out of not only the joint accounts with Drake, but several of her personal accounts as well. This is ridiculous, she fumed at the bank manager. These are my accounts. Actually, Mrs. Sullivan, the manager explained calmly. The accounts in question were flagged for potential fraud. Several large transfers over the past month triggered automatic security protocols. I authorized those transfers without your husband's knowledge or consent, according to our records. For joint accounts, that's problematic. Meanwhile, Drake met with Antonio Dominguez at a secure location to review the latest recordings from Bellini's restaurant. She served him this morning. Vanessa was telling her father and Brendan. He looked pathetic, just broken. Judge Reed laughed. Did he cry? Sullivan always struck me as the crying type. Nearly, Vanessa replied. The best part is, he has no idea about the restaurant sale. Everything proceeding as planned then, Brendan confirmed. My company acquires Sullivan's Grill at bankruptcy auction. We renovate and reopen under a new name and establish another clean channel for the Saginaw funds. Judge Reed's voice lowered. The Senate announcement is in 11 days. Once that's done and the initial media scrutiny passes, we move the full amount. $20 million through the restaurant, the construction contracts, and Walsh's tech companies. And the other matter? Brendan asked carefully. Being handled as we speak. Henderson and Marks will both be removed from the equation before they can testify. Drake stopped the recording. Henderson and Marks, who are they? Antonio looked grim. City inspectors who approved the waterfront development despite environmental concerns. Word is they've been cooperating with a federal investigation. Drake nodded. They're tying up loose ends before the senator announcement. We need to accelerate our timeline. That afternoon, Sophia filed emergency motions contesting the divorce proceedings, specifically requesting removal of Judge Hamilton due to conflict of interest. Simultaneously, she submitted evidence of financial malfeasance by Vanessa, freezing additional assets pending investigation. Drake himself visited the office of Councilwoman Elaine Porter, a longtime political rival of Judge Reed. These are serious allegations, Mr. Sullivan, Porter said, reviewing the documents Drake provided, carefully selected evidence of Reed's corruption that didn't reveal Drake's full hand. I know, Drake acknowledged, and dangerous ones. Judge Reed has connections throughout the city, including in my office, no doubt, Porter mused. Why come to me? Because you've stood against him before. Because your reputation for integrity is well-earned. Drake paused. And because the waterfront development he's orchestrating with the Saginaws would destroy your district. Porter's eyes widened slightly. You have proof of Reed's connection to the Saginaws. Some, Drake admitted. Not enough for criminal charges yet, but enough to delay the development contracts until a proper investigation can occur. Porter studied him. Your wife is Reed's daughter. This could be interpreted as a bitter husband's revenge. It could, Drake agreed. But the evidence speaks for itself. Review it, verify it, then decide. As Drake left Councilwoman Porter's office, he received a call from Teresa. We have a problem, she said without preamble. Judge Reed just called in favors at the police department. There's a warrant being prepared for your arrest. Alleged assault on Vanessa. Drake absorbed this calmly. She's claiming I hit her, according to my source. She visited the emergency room this morning with bruises. Dr. Landry signed the report. Another Reed family friend, Drake noted. How much time do I have? Hours, maybe less. Drake, this is serious. Domestic violence charges would destroy your credibility and give them leverage in the divorce. It would, Drake agreed. If I were anywhere they could find me. Implement contingency plan B. I'm going dark for 48 hours. Drake's disappearance sent the Reed family into a frenzy. Police arrived at his home and restaurant with arrest warrants, finding neither Drake nor any trace of where he might have gone. Vanessa, sporting professionally applied makeup to simulate bruises, gave tearful interviews about her abusive husband. Judge Reed publicly condemned Drake, promising that justice will be served against this violent coward. Meanwhile, Drake operated from a secure location, a waterfront warehouse owned by a shell company he had established years earlier as a contingency. Kyle and Teresa coordinated their activities through encrypted channels, implementing Drake's carefully constructed plan. First, Rico Dominguez filed a formal complaint against Herbert Grossman, providing evidence of the fabricated health violations at Sullivan's Grill. This triggered an automatic review process, temporarily invalidating the restaurant's closure. Second, Martin accessed the banking records Drake had quietly assembled, documenting Vanessa's systematic theft from their joint accounts. These records were anonymously delivered to the Financial Crimes Division of the Philadelphia Police Department, a unit independent from Judge Reed's influence. Third, Sophia filed emergency injunctions preventing any sale or transfer of Sullivan's Grill, citing evidence of conspiracy to defraud. By the second evening of Drake's disappearance, the Reed family was facing unexpected resistance on multiple fronts. Judge Reed called an emergency meeting at his home, unaware that Kyle had installed surveillance devices there as well. This is unacceptable, Reed raged. Where the hell is Sullivan? And why are these legal challenges proceeding? My contacts say Judge Hamilton may be recused from the divorce case, Philip Reed reported. Sullivan's lawyer filed compelling evidence of bias. What evidence? Vanessa demanded. Hamilton has been on our payroll for years. That's the problem, Brendan interjected. Someone provided banking records showing payments from our shell companies to Hamilton. Nothing definitive, but enough to raise questions. Judge Reed paced the room. In the restaurant? What's happening there? The closure's been temporarily lifted pending review, Brendan admitted. Some health inspector named Dominguez filed a complaint against Grossman, claiming professional misconduct. Dominguez? Reed stopped pacing. Antonio Dominguez's cousin? The restaurant owner? I think so, Brendan confirmed. Why? Reed's expression darkened. Dominguez never liked me. Always thought he was too good to support my campaigns. You think he's helping Sullivan? Vanessa asked. I think we've underestimated your husband, Reed said grimly. These aren't random setbacks. This is coordinated resistance. Drake watched the surveillance feed with grim satisfaction. The Reeds were beginning to realize they faced a formidable opponent, not the broken man they had expected. On the third morning, Drake implemented the next phase of his plan. Teresa delivered a comprehensive file to FBI Special Agent Marcus Rivera, evidence of Judge Reed's corruption, his connections to the Saginaw family, and documentation of the waterfront development scheme. This is explosive material, Rivera noted, reviewing the file. But why anonymously? Why not come forward as a witness? My client fears for his safety, Teresa explained. Judge Reed has already demonstrated willingness to eliminate threats. You're referring to Anthony Reyes? Teresa nodded. My client has reason to believe Reed was involved in Reyes's disappearance. The evidence is circumstantial but compelling. Rivera studied her. This wouldn't happen to involve Drake Sullivan, would it? The restaurateur whose wife recently accused him of assault. Teresa maintained a neutral expression. I can neither confirm nor deny my client's identity. Convenient timing, Rivera observed. Reed's daughter accuses her husband of assault, and suddenly we receive evidence of Reed's corruption. The evidence stands on its own, Teresa countered. Investigate it or don't. That's your choice. But people's lives are at stake, including two city inspectors named Henderson and Marks. Rivera's expression changed. What about them? They may be in danger. Reed considers them liabilities in the waterfront development project. After leaving the FBI office, Teresa contacted Drake. Package delivered. Rivera was skeptical but engaged, especially when I mentioned Henderson and Marks. Good, Drake replied. Is everything ready for tomorrow? Yes. Operation Prodigal Son is set. The following morning, Drake Sullivan walked into Philadelphia Police Department headquarters and surrendered himself voluntarily. The media had been anonymously tipped off, ensuring cameras captured his arrival. Drake appeared calm and collected, dressed in an impeccable suit, not the appearance of a fugitive domestic abuser. Mr. Sullivan, Detective Gardner sneered, the same detective who had closed the Anthony Reyes case prematurely. How kind of you to join us after evading arrest? I wasn't evading anything, Drake replied politely. I was gathering evidence. He nodded to Sophia, who placed a thick file on the detective's desk. Evidence that proves Vanessa Reed Sullivan fabricated her assault claims as part of a larger conspiracy orchestrated by Judge Norman Reed. Gardner glanced at the file without opening it. Save it for court. You're being charged with domestic assault and battery. No, Sophia interjected firmly, he's not. Not when you review the evidence, which includes security footage from the Sullivan residence showing Mrs. Sullivan applying fake bruises the morning she claimed to have been assaulted. She played a short video on her tablet, clearly showing Vanessa carefully applying makeup to create the appearance of bruises. Gardner paled slightly. This could be doctored. The original footage has been verified by 2 independent forensic experts, Sophia replied. Their sworn affidavits are in the file, along with evidence that Dr. Landry, who signed the medical report, received a $50,000 payment from one of Judge Reed's shell companies the same day. The detective glanced toward the door, clearly uncomfortable. This doesn't change the fact that a warrant was issued. A warrant based on false testimony is invalid, Sophia countered. But by all means, arrest my client. The press conference we've scheduled for noon will be even more dramatic if he's in handcuffs. Gardner looked from Drake to Sophia, then at the waiting media outside. "Wait here," he muttered, taking the file and leaving the room. Drake turned to Sophia. "How long?" 20 minutes before Gardner calls Reed. Another 20 before Reed realizes the implications. That gives us approximately 1 hour before they mount a counteroffensive. Drake nodded. "Perfect. By then, Phase 4 will be active." Gardner returned 40 minutes later, visibly agitated. "The charges are being reviewed," he announced reluctantly. "You're free to go for now, Sullivan. But don't leave town." Drake smiled pleasantly. "I wouldn't dream of it, Detective. Philadelphia is my home. I intend to stay for a very long time." As they left the police station, reporters swarmed them. Drake appeared surprised by the attention, playing perfectly into the narrative of an innocent man wrongfully accused. "Mr. Sullivan, can you comment on your wife's allegations?" Drake projected dignified restraint. "I can only say that the truth will emerge through proper legal channels. I have great faith in our justice system. Are you aware that Judge Reed has publicly called for your imprisonment?" "I have nothing but respect for Judge Reed's distinguished career," Drake replied diplomatically. "I'm sure once all facts are established, this unfortunate situation will be resolved." His measured responses, contrasting sharply with the Reed's emotional accusations, created exactly the public perception Drake had intended. By that evening, social media was buzzing with speculation about the case, with many questioning Vanessa's claims. Phase 4 activated at precisely 3 p.m., when Councilwoman Porter held a press conference announcing a formal investigation into the waterfront development project, citing serious concerns about environmental impact and procedural irregularities. Judge Reed, scheduled to announce his Senate candidacy in just 8 days, now faced multiple unexpected challenges. His daughter's assault claims questioned, his signature development project under investigation, and rumors of corruption beginning to circulate. That night, Drake received confirmation from Kyle's surveillance. The Reeds were panicking. "This is a disaster," Judge Reed shouted. "The Senate announcement is barely a week away, and suddenly we're facing scrutiny from all sides." "Daddy, calm down," Vanessa urged. "We still have leverage. The divorce proceedings are stalled because Hamilton was removed from the case." Reed interrupted. "Don't you understand? Someone is coordinating this. Each attack targets a different vulnerability, systematically dismantling our plans." "It's Sullivan," Brendan insisted. "He must have help." Obviously, Reed snapped. "But who? And how much do they know?" Silence fell as the implication settled over the room. "What about our arrangement with the Saginaws?" Philip asked finally. "If the waterfront project stalls, they won't be pleased," Reed acknowledged grimly. "We need to contain this situation immediately. Brendan, contact Gardner. Tell him to find something, anything, to arrest Sullivan on legitimate charges. Vanessa, maintain your story about the assault. The public loves a victim. Philip, reach out to our media contacts. Start a smear campaign against Sullivan. Criminal history, mental instability, whatever works." "And the Saginaws?" Brendan pressed. "I'll handle them," Reed decided. "We accelerate the timeline. Move the money now, before additional scrutiny makes it impossible." Drake forwarded this recording to Agent Rivera with a simple message. "The transfer happens tonight. $20 million through accounts listed in the evidence packet. This is your chance to catch them in the act." By midnight, FBI agents were monitoring the banking activity of all parties involved. By 2 a.m., they had documented illegal transfers totaling $15 million before Judge Reed, apparently sensing trouble, halted the operation. Drake's plan was working perfectly. The Reeds were reacting exactly as he had predicted, making desperate moves that only further incriminated them. Chapter 6: The Revelation. 7 days before Judge Reed's planned Senate announcement, Drake received an unexpected visitor at Sullivan's Grill, which had reopened following the invalidation of Grossman's inspection. Antonio Dominguez entered through the back door, looking anxious. "They came to my restaurant," Antonio reported without preamble. "Reed and Walsh, asking questions about you, about whether I've been helping you." Drake maintained a calm demeanor. "What did you tell them?" "That I barely know you beyond professional courtesy." Antonio shook his head. They didn't believe me. Reed threatened my business licenses, said health inspectors would find my kitchen problematic next week. They're getting desperate, Drake noted, lashing out at perceived enemies. Desperate is dangerous, Antonio warned. My sources say Reed met with Calvin Saginaw yesterday. Not as lieutenants, Saginaw himself. This was significant. Calvin Saginaw rarely met personally with anyone outside his organization, preferring to operate through intermediaries to maintain deniability. What else? Drake pressed. They're looking for something. Reed keeps mentioning recordings and surveillance. He thinks someone has been monitoring him. Drake nodded thoughtfully. They're beginning to understand the scope of what they're facing. Drake, Antonio said seriously, these people, they don't just threaten. The Saginaws have eliminated entire families who cross them. I know the risks, Drake assured him, but we're past the point of retreat. The next 48 hours are critical. After Antonio left, Drake contacted Kyle. Remove all surveillance equipment from the Reed properties immediately. They're actively searching for it. Already done, Kyle confirmed. But you should know, they've hired private security for the judge's home and Vanessa's apartment. Professional contractors, likely former military. Expected, Drake replied. Implement countermeasures as planned. That afternoon, Sophia called with news from the divorce proceedings. The case has been reassigned to Judge Caroline Wilson. Drake raised an eyebrow. Wilson? She's known for her strict adherence to legal procedure. Exactly, Sophia sounded pleased. Reed can't influence her. She's reviewing our evidence of financial misconduct by Vanessa and has frozen all contested assets pending resolution. How did the Reeds react? Violently. Norman Reed actually yelled at Wilson in her chambers. She threatened him with contempt. This was better than Drake had anticipated. Judge Reed's composure was cracking under pressure, making mistakes that further undermined his position. That evening, national news broke a story that sent shockwaves through Philadelphia. FBI investigating prominent judge for corruption, organized crime ties. While Reed wasn't named in the initial reports, the details made his identity clear to informed observers. Drake watched the coverage from Sullivan's Grill, where business had surprisingly increased following the publicity surrounding the false closure and Drake's subsequent vindication. The restaurant was full, customers sending supportive comments and curious glances his way. Miguel approached his table. Boss, there's someone asking to see you. Says her name is Gloria Reed. Drake concealed his surprise. Vanessa's mother, Gloria, had always been the most distant member of the Reed family, maintaining a careful public image while avoiding direct involvement in her husband's activities. Send her to my office, Drake instructed. Gloria Reed entered cautiously, looking elegant but strained. Unlike her husband and daughter, Gloria had always treated Drake with basic courtesy, if not warmth. Drake, she said softly, accepting the seat he offered. Thank you for seeing me. Of course, he replied neutrally. What can I do for you, Gloria? She clasped her hands tightly. This situation, it's spiraling out of control. Norman is not himself. Vanessa is following his lead, as always. Drake waited, saying nothing. I know my husband and daughter have treated you terribly, Gloria continued. The divorce, the false allegations, it's unconscionable. Yet you've said nothing publicly, Drake observed. Gloria flinched. I've spent 30 years looking the other way, Drake. It's what was expected of me. And now I'm afraid, she admitted. These rumors about Norman's connections to the Saginaws. Drake, do you know what that family is capable of? I have some idea, Drake replied evenly. Gloria leaned forward. Whatever you're doing, however you're fighting back, you need to stop. For your own safety. Is that concern for me, Gloria, or fear that your family's crimes will be exposed? She pulled back slightly. Both, perhaps. Norman believes you've orchestrated everything. The investigations, the media leaks, the legal challenges. He's coming for you, Drake, not just through legal channels. Is that a threat? A warning, Gloria corrected. From someone who has watched Norman destroy people before. She hesitated, including Anthony Reyes. Drake's expression didn't change, but he noted the confirmation. What do you know about Reyes? Only that he disappeared after threatening to expose Norman. I don't ask questions when people vanish from Norman's life. Willful ignorance is still complicity, Gloria. She looked away. I know. I've told myself otherwise for decades, but I know. She stood to leave. I can't offer a deal. Norman is prepared to drop everything. The divorce, the allegations, the attacks on your business. In exchange, you cease whatever campaign you're waging against him. Drake studied her carefully. Did Norman send you with this offer? Gloria hesitated fractionally. Yes. You're lying, Drake said calmly. Norman Reed would never admit defeat by offering terms. He'd fight to destroy me regardless of cost. Please, Drake, Gloria's composure cracked. If you have evidence against Norman, use it to negotiate. Don't destroy my family completely. The way he planned to destroy me? Drake countered. The way he's destroyed others? Why should I show mercy when none was intended for me? Because you're better than him, Gloria said simply. Better than all of us. Drake stood, indicating the meeting was over. Tell your husband that any deal must start with the truth. About Anthony Reyes. About the Saginaw connection. About everything. He'll never admit to that, Gloria said hopelessly. Then we have nothing to discuss. After Gloria left, Drake immediately contacted Kyle. The Reeds just made contact through Gloria. They're desperate enough to offer terms. That's unexpected, Kyle noted. What are you thinking? That it's time for the final phase. Contact Teresa and Martin. We move tonight. While Drake had been building his legal and public relations counteroffensive, Teresa and Martin had been developing the most crucial element of his plan. Irrefutable evidence linking Judge Reed and Brendan Walsh to Anthony Reyes's murder. That evidence came from the hunting cabin. The ground-penetrating radar had identified something buried beneath the concrete floor. Working with a trusted forensic team, they had extracted samples through imperceptible drill holes, confirming human remains. Using the cabin's security system against itself, they had compiled a comprehensive timeline showing Judge Reed, Brendan Walsh, and Philip Reed transporting a heavy object wrapped in plastic from the cabin's interior to the basement the night Reyes disappeared. This evidence, combined with the video showing Reyes's interrogation and the financial records documenting the subsequent cover-up, created an airtight case. At precisely 11 p.m., Teresa delivered this complete file to FBI agent Rivera, along with the location of Reyes's submerged vehicle. Simultaneously, Kyle transmitted select portions to trusted journalists at 3 national news organizations. By midnight, FBI agents were securing Judge Reed's hunting cabin. By 2 a.m., they had obtained emergency warrants for the Reed family compound, Brendan Walsh's penthouse, and the offices of Walsh Technology Ventures. Drake watched from his restaurant as the operation unfolded. Teresa provided regular updates. Reed compound secured. Judge in custody. Then, Walsh arrested at his home. Philip Reed apprehended attempting to board private flight. Dawn brought news headlines that shocked Philadelphia. Federal judge arrested. Norman Reed facing charges of murder, corruption. Tech CEO Brendan Walsh implicated in killing of whistleblower. Senate hopeful's criminal empire exposed. At 7 a.m., Drake received a call from a number he didn't recognize. It was Vanessa, using a borrowed phone. "What have you done?" she demanded, voice raw with emotion. "I haven't done anything," Drake replied calmly. "Your father's crimes caught up with him. This is your revenge," Vanessa accused. "You orchestrated all of it. Your father murdered a man, Vanessa. Brendan helped him. They were planning to do the same to others. Did you expect me to ignore that? They're saying I was involved." Vanessa's voice cracked. "The FBI questioned me for hours about the cabin, about Reyes. Were you involved?" Drake asked simply. Silence stretched between them. "I didn't know they would kill him," Vanessa finally whispered. "I thought they were just going to scare him. But you knew he was being held against his will. You brought food while he was captive." Another pause. "How do you know that?" "I know everything, Vanessa. Every meeting, every plan, every lie." Drake, her voice turned pleading. "Whatever they're offering, I can give you more. Money, property, I have accounts you don't know about." "I don't want your money," Drake said coldly. "I want justice." "For what? For a divorce?" for a failed restaurant. Vanessa's desperation turned to anger. You're destroying lives over wounded pride. No, Vanessa. I'm ensuring murderers and criminals face consequences. Your father and Brendan killed man. They planned to kill others. They were corrupting our city, using your family's influence to protect criminals like the Saginaws. You don't understand, Vanessa insisted. Daddy was building something important. The Senate position would have given him even more power to abuse, Drake finished. It ends here, Vanessa. They're coming for me next, she said, voice small. Drake, please, help me. For what we once had. Drake closed his eyes, momentarily remembering the woman he'd believed he married, before learning everything had been a calculated lie. Goodbye, Vanessa. He ended the call, turning to find Teresa watching him with concern. Are you all right? She asked. Drake nodded. It's almost over. What's the status on the financial recovery? Sophia's team has identified most of the hidden accounts. With the RICO charges against Reed and Walsh, asset seizure is proceeding. You should recover everything they took, plus damages. And Sullivan's Grill, fully cleared of all allegations. The health department issued a formal apology this morning. Drake smiled slightly. Then we have one final task. That afternoon, Drake submitted the complete evidence package regarding Vanessa's involvement in the Reyes case to the FBI. Security footage from the cabin showing her awareness of the captive, financial records documenting her role in the subsequent cover-up, and her recorded admissions from their phone conversation that morning. By evening, Vanessa Reed Sullivan had been arrested as an accessory to kidnapping and murder. As Drake watched the news coverage from his restaurant office, Antonio Dominguez joined him with a bottle of aged scotch. To justice, Antonio toasted, pouring 2 glasses. Drake raised his glass. To truth. The Reeds destroyed many lives, Antonio observed. Not just Reyes. Yes, Drake agreed. And now they'll answer for it. Antonio studied him curiously. May I ask you something? When did you begin suspecting them? When did all this start? Drake considered the question. I had doubts about Vanessa's commitment to our marriage for some time, but I didn't understand the full scope until that dinner at your restaurant, when her family celebrated her relationship with Brendan while I watched from the doorway. And the note I sent you changed everything, Drake acknowledged. It gave me proof of what I'd only suspected. Antonio nodded thoughtfully. You know, I've owned Bellini's for 30 years. I've seen many powerful families come and go. The Reeds were among the worst. Entitled, cruel, believing themselves above consequence. They weren't, Drake said simply. No, Antonio agreed. Thanks to you. As Antonio left, Drake remained in his office, watching the city lights emerge as darkness fell. The Reeds had believed him weak, a hard-working restaurateur trying desperately to please his wife's family, lacking the resources or cunning to fight back when they moved against him. They had failed to see the man beneath the mask, the strategic thinker, the patient planner, the ruthless enforcer of justice. Their fatal mistake had been believing Drake Sullivan was the man they had created in their minds, rather than the man he truly was. Chapter 7. The Trial. 6 months after the arrests, Philadelphia was still reeling from the revelations about the Reed family. The case had expanded far beyond Anthony Reyes's murder, uncovering decades of corruption, bribery, and criminal conspiracy. Drake Sullivan had rebuilt his life methodically. Sullivan's Grill was thriving, now expanded to his second location. The divorce for Vanessa had been finalized, with all assets returned to Drake plus substantial damages. His reputation, initially questioned, had been completely rehabilitated as the full extent of the Reed family's crimes became public. The federal courthouse downtown was surrounded by media as the trial of Judge Norman Reed entered its 5th week. Drake arrived early, taking his now familiar seat in the back of the courtroom. As a key witness who had already testified, he wasn't required to attend daily proceedings, but he rarely missed a session. Teresa slipped into the seat beside him. Prosecution's wrapping up today. Closing arguments expected tomorrow. Drake nodded. Any surprises expected? No. Reed's defense is collapsing. 3 more former associates turned state's evidence yesterday. The courtroom filled quickly. The trial had attracted national attention, a rare case of a federal judge facing murder charges alongside racketeering, corruption, and conspiracy. Brendan Walsh and Philip Reed had already pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for testimony against Norman. Vanessa entered with her attorney, refusing to look at Drake as she passed. She had ultimately accepted a plea deal, testifying against her father and Brendan in exchange for a reduced sentence of 10 years. Judge Norman Reed was the last to enter, escorted by U.S. Marshals. Once commanding and imperious, he now appeared diminished in his orange jumpsuit, though his expression remained defiant. He scanned the courtroom, his gaze finding Drake. The hatred in his eyes was palpable. The day's proceedings focused on forensic evidence from a cabin. The concrete floor had been removed, revealing Anthony Reyes's remains. DNA evidence, tool marks, and soil samples created an irrefutable timeline of the murder and hasty burial. During a recess, Drake stepped outside for air. The autumn day was crisp, leaves swirling across the courthouse steps. A familiar figure approached, Gloria Reed, who had filed for divorce from Norman immediately after his arrest. "Drake," she acknowledged quietly. "Gloria," he returned with a nod. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I've attended every day," she said. "Penance, perhaps." They stood in awkward silence until Gloria spoke again. "The prosecution offered me immunity for my testimony." "I know. Your statement was compelling." "I told the truth," Gloria said simply. "After decades of looking away, I finally told the truth." Drake studied her. Unlike Norman and Vanessa, Gloria showed genuine remorse. "What will you do after the trial?" "Leave Philadelphia. Start again somewhere no one knows the Reed name." She hesitated. "I want to apologize to you, Drake. For everything." "You weren't behind any of it," Drake pointed out. "No, but I saw how they treated you. I knew what Norman and Vanessa were planning with Brendan." I said nothing. Gloria looked away. Silence in the face of wrongdoing is its own kind of evil. Drake couldn't disagree. "Take care of yourself, Gloria." As she turned to leave, she paused. "May I ask you something? All those years, pretending to be someone you weren't around our family, didn't it wear on you?" "I wasn't pretending," Drake corrected. "I genuinely loved Vanessa. I genuinely tried to earn your family's respect. That part was real. And the rest? The skills you used to bring Norman down." Drake shrugged slightly. "Just parts of myself I didn't need until I did." When court resumed, the prosecution introduced their final witness, Detective Miles Gardner, now facing charges himself for his role in covering up the Reyes murder. Gardner had accepted a plea deal in exchange for testimony against Judge Reed. "Detective Gardner," the prosecutor began, "please tell the court about your conversation with Judge Reed regarding Anthony Reyes's disappearance." Gardner cleared his throat nervously. "Judge Reed called me directly the night Reyes went missing. Said there was a situation at his hunting cabin that needed to be handled discreetly. When I arrived, Reyes was already dead. And what did the defendant instruct you to do?" "To declare it a missing persons case and ensure the investigation went nowhere. In exchange, he arranged for my promotion and a payment of $50,000. The testimony continued, Gardner describing in detail how Judge Reed had coordinated the cover-up, threatened potential witnesses, and used his judicial authority to bury evidence. Throughout, Norman Reed sat stone-faced, occasionally whispering to his attorney, but showing no remorse or reaction. As proceedings ended for the day, Drake received a text from Kyle. "Package secured. Final piece in place." Drake smiled slightly. While the criminal trial progressed, he had been quietly pursuing one last element of his plan, locating Judge Reed's hidden offshore accounts, containing millions in bribes and criminal proceeds that federal authorities hadn't yet discovered. Kyle had tracked the funds to a bank in the Cayman Islands, using connections from their military days to bypass security measures. The money wouldn't be going back to Reed or his family. Instead, Drake had arranged for every dollar to be donated to a foundation supporting families of whistleblowers and victims of judicial misconduct, named in Anthony Reyes's honor. The next morning, closing arguments began. The prosecution methodically outlined the case against Judge Norman Reed. The physical evidence, the financial paper trail, the testimony of accomplices and witnesses. The defense, left with few options, focused on procedural issues and attempts to discredit key witnesses. As the jury was dismissed to begin deliberations, Norman Reed finally acknowledged Drake directly, approaching as far as the marshals would allow. "You think you've won," Reed said, voice low but intense. "You think this is over." Drake met his gaze calmly. "Justice isn't about winning, Judge Reed. It's about truth." "Truth?" Reed scoffed. "You manipulated evidence, coerced witnesses, orchestrated this entire persecution." "I simply ensured that your actions came to light," Drake countered. "Everything else, the murder, the corruption, the betrayal, that was all you." Reed's eyes narrowed. "I still have resources you can't imagine. Friends and places you'll never reach. This isn't over, Sullivan." Drake stepped closer, his voice for Reed alone. "Actually, it is. As we speak, your final $15 million in the Caymans is being transferred to the Anthony Reyes Foundation. There's nothing left. No hidden resources, no secret allies, no escape routes. You've lost everything, just as you planned for me." The color drained from Reed's face. "You can't. That's impossible. Goodbye, Judge Reed." Drake turned and walked away, leaving the once powerful man stunned and silent. The jury deliberated for just 7 hours before returning with a verdict: guilty on all counts. Judge Norman Reed was sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. As Reed was led away, his eyes found Drake one final time, not with hatred now, but with something like fearful respect, finally understanding the man he had so fatally underestimated. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Drake for comments. "Mr. Sullivan, how do you feel about the verdict?" Drake considered the question. "I feel that justice has been served, not just for me, but for Anthony Reyes and all the others harmed by Judge Reed's actions." "Will you be attending Vanessa Reed's sentencing next week?" "No," Drake said simply. "That chapter of my life is closed." Later that evening, Drake hosted a small gathering at Sullivan's Grill. Teresa, Kyle, Martin, Antonio, Sophia, and the others who had helped expose the Reed family's crimes. They celebrated quietly, aware that their victory had come at great cost. To Anthony Reyes, Drake toasted. May he rest in peace, knowing his killers faced justice. As the others raised their glasses, Teresa asked, "What now, Drake? What's next for you?" Drake looked around the restaurant he had built, the business the Reeds had tried to take from him. "This is enough. Running my restaurants, living honestly. That's all I ever wanted." Kyle raised an eyebrow. "Really? After everything you orchestrated? You were brilliant, man. Strategic. Relentless. That was necessity, not preference," Drake explained. "I'm not interested in power or revenge for its own sake. I just ensure that those who harm others face consequences." His phone buzzed with a news alert. Reed family properties to be auctioned. Proceeds to victims fund. Drake smiled faintly. Another piece of the Reed empire dismantled, transformed into something positive. Antonio raised his glass again. To Drake Sullivan, a man who taught Philadelphia's most powerful family that actions have consequences. "I'll drink to that," Kyle agreed. Drake accepted their toast with a nod, but his mind was already elsewhere. The Reed case had awakened something in him, not a thirst for vengeance, but a recognition of his ability to balance scales that the justice system sometimes couldn't reach. Perhaps there were other Norman Reeds in the world, other powerful people who believed themselves beyond accountability. Perhaps Drake Sullivan hadn't quite finished his work after all. Chapter 8. The Echoes. 1 year after Judge Reed's conviction, Drake Sullivan sat across from FBI agent Marcus Rivera in a quiet corner of Sullivan's Grill. The restaurant had expanded to 3 locations across Philadelphia, each successful, each a testament to Drake's resilience. "Congratulations on the promotion," Drake said, noting Rivera's new title, Special Agent in Charge of the Philadelphia Field Office. "Thank you," Rivera replied. The Reed case opened a lot of doors. Drake smiled. "I imagine so. Bringing down a corrupt federal judge makes for a compelling career highlight. Which brings me to why I asked for this meeting." Rivera leaned forward. "The investigation didn't end with the Reeds. We've been pulling threads, following connections. And Drake prompted. We've uncovered a network, judges, prosecutors, police officials, all compromised in similar ways. Not just in Philadelphia, but across the eastern seaboard. Drake nodded thoughtfully. That's not surprising. Norman Reed didn't corrupt the system alone. No, Rivera agreed. He was just one node in a larger web. He hesitated. I've been reviewing everything from the Reed investigation. The evidence that appeared at exactly the right moments. The recordings. The financial trails. It was remarkably thorough. Good detective work, Drake suggested. Rivera smiled thinly. Beyond good. Almost orchestrated. Drake sipped his coffee, expression neutral. What are you suggesting, Agent Rivera? Nothing officially. Rivera maintained eye contact. Unofficially, I believe we had help. Sophisticated help from someone with resources, skills, and motivation. Interesting theory. More than a theory. Rivera placed a small notebook on the table. Starting 3 months before Reed's arrest, unusual electronic intrusions were detected in certain secure systems. Nothing stolen, nothing damaged, just information accessed. Banking records, property deeds, sealed court documents. Drake raised an eyebrow. Sounds like you have a security problem. We had a vigilante problem, Rivera corrected. Someone working outside official channels, gathering evidence we couldn't legally obtain. And yet you used this evidence to convict Reed. Once it came to us through legitimate channels, yes. Rivera tapped the notebook. The question is, who had both the capability and motivation to execute such a complex operation? Drake spread his hands. I'm just a restaurateur, Agent Rivera. Are you? Rivera challenged mildly. Your military record suggests otherwise. 8 years in special operations. Commendations for intelligence work. Psychological warfare expertise. Ancient history, Drake dismissed. I left that life behind when I met Vanessa. Did you? Or did you just shelve those skills until they became necessary? Drake's expression revealed nothing. What exactly do you want, Agent Rivera? Officially? Nothing. Reed is in prison. Justice was served. Rivera leaned back. Unofficially? I want to understand my anonymous partner better. And if this hypothetical partner existed, what would happen to them? Nothing, Rivera assured him. The methods may have been questionable, but the outcome was just. More than that, it was necessary. Reed would have escaped conventional law enforcement. Drake considered this. This hypothetical partner, you believe they're still active? I believe someone with their skills and moral compass wouldn't simply stop after one case. Not when there are others like Reed still out there. Drake remained silent, neither confirming nor denying. Rivera continued. 3 months ago, Judge William Hargrove in Boston was exposed for taking bribes. 2 months ago, District Attorney Peter Cowell in Baltimore was linked to witness tampering. Last month, Police Commissioner Frank Daniels in Washington, D.C. was implicated in evidence suppression. He paused meaningfully. All cases built on evidence that appeared through unusual channels. Sounds like justice is being served, Drake observed neutrally. It is, Rivera agreed. In ways the system itself sometimes fails to achieve. Drake studied the FBI agent carefully. Why tell me this? Because I want you to know something, Rivera said quietly. Some of us inside the system recognize its limitations. We understand that justice sometimes requires unconventional approaches. Are you proposing cooperation, Agent Rivera? I'm acknowledging a reality, Rivera clarified, and perhaps suggesting that if this hypothetical partner ever needed assistance, information, access, protection, there are those within the Bureau who might provide it. Discreetly, Drake absorbed this surprising offer. Hypothetically speaking, that could be valuable. Hypothetically, Rivera agreed, standing to leave. Thank you for the coffee, Mr. Sullivan. Your restaurants are doing well. Thank you. I'm particularly proud of our newest location. Yes, Rivera nodded. The one adjacent to the federal courthouse. Strategic position. After Rivera departed, Drake remained at the table, contemplating their conversation. The agent had essentially offered a tacit alliance, acknowledging Drake's extralegal activities while suggesting limited support. It was unexpected, but potentially useful. Drake had indeed continued his work after the Reed case, identifying and exposing corrupt officials who believed themselves untouchable. Each operation was meticulously planned, evidence gathered through methods that wouldn't withstand legal scrutiny but could trigger legitimate investigations once appropriately laundered. His phone buzzed with a message from Teresa. Boston package delivered. Response positive. Another corrupt judge exposed. Another small victory for justice. Drake had found purpose in this work. Not revenge or power, but restoration of balance. Using the skills that had once made him valuable to the military to now serve justice in ways the system itself couldn't. He was contemplating his next move when Miguel approached the table. "Boss, there's someone here to see you. Says it's important." A woman Drake didn't recognize stood by the bar, mid-30s, professionally dressed, with a cautious demeanor of someone entering unfamiliar territory. "Mr. Sullivan?" she asked as he approached. "My name is Claire Winters. I'm a prosecutor in the Harrisburg District Attorney's Office." Drake gestured to a private booth. "How can I help you, Ms. Winters?" Once seated, Claire spoke in hushed tones. "This is unorthodox, but I was advised to contact you by a mutual acquaintance. Agent Rivera suggested you might understand my situation." Drake maintained a neutral expression. "Which is?" "I'm working a case against Superior Court Judge Richard Garrison. Racketeering, judicial misconduct, possibly worse." Claire's hands tightened around her water glass. "The evidence keeps disappearing. Witnesses recant. Nothing sticks." "That must be frustrating," Drake observed. "It's more than frustrating," Claire replied, intensity breaking through her professional veneer. "Garrison has been selling justice to the highest bidder for decades. Children have been returned to abusive parents who could afford his consultation fees. Violent criminals walk free if they have the right connections. And conventional methods have failed completely. Internal affairs, judicial review, even federal oversight, all blocked or diverted." Claire leaned forward. 2 weeks ago, my key witness was found dead in his apartment. Apparent suicide, according to the police report. The man had just bought a vacation home and was planning his daughter's wedding. Drake nodded, understanding perfectly. "Why come to me? I'm not in law enforcement." "Agent Rivera said you." Claire hesitated, choosing her words carefully, understand how to level playing fields when a system is compromised. "Did he?" Drake's expression revealed nothing. "Agent Rivera has an interesting perspective on my capabilities." "Please," Claire said quietly. "I've spent 5 years building cases against Garrison. 5 years watching him escape consequences. I'm out of options." Drake considered her request. This wasn't a personal vendetta like the Reed case. This was a prosecutor seeking help when legitimate channels had failed. "Tell me about Garrison," he finally said. "Everything you know." For the next hour, Claire outlined Judge Garrison's corruption, the pattern of suspicious rulings, unexplained wealth, connections to organized crime, and the trail of destroyed lives left in his wake. "I have files," she added, sliding a flash drive across the table. "Everything I've gathered officially and unofficially. It's not enough for court, but it might be enough to start with." Drake finished pocketing the drive. "I'll look into it, Ms. Winters. That's all I can promise." Relief washed across Claire's face. "Thank you. Truly." After she left, Drake contacted Kyle. "We have a new project. Harrisburg. Judge Richard Garrison. Another corrupt judge?" Kyle asked. "You're developing a specialty." "This one's different," Drake explained. "We're working with someone inside the system. A prosecutor named Claire Winters." "Risky," Kyle cautioned. "Can she be trusted?" "We'll verify everything before proceeding," Drake assured him. "But if her information checks out, Garrison goes down like Reed did." That night, Drake reviewed Claire's files in his secure office beneath Sullivan's grill, a space unknown even to most of his staff, equipped with advanced technology and communication systems that would have seemed out of place in a restaurant. The evidence against Garrison was compelling but circumstantial: suspicious financial transactions, pattern of favorable rulings for certain attorneys, inexplicable dismissals of strong cases. Nothing that would survive Garrison's connections and influence. Drake initiated standard protocols, background checks on Claire Winters to confirm her legitimacy, preliminary surveillance on Garrison to establish patterns, financial investigations to identify vulnerabilities. By morning, he had confirmation that Claire was genuine, a dedicated prosecutor with an impeccable record. Garrison, conversely, exhibited all the classic signs of corruption, including multiple properties purchased through shell companies and regular meetings with known criminal associates. Drake assembled his team: Kyle for tactical support, Teresa for legal analysis, Martin for technical expertise. They gathered in the secure room to plan their approach. Garrison is more cautious than Reed was, Teresa noted, reviewing the files. No obvious illegal activities. He's learned from others' mistakes. Everyone leaves traces, Drake countered. We just need to find them. Martin examined Garrison's financial records. His hidden accounts are sophisticated. Multiple layers of shells and trusts. He's using professional money managers. Focus on the cases Claire highlighted, Drake instructed. Cross-reference parties who benefited from Garrison's rulings with financial flows to his suspected accounts. The investigation proceeded methodically over the following weeks. Drake maintained his normal routine running Sullivan's Grill while directing operations against Garrison. The team established surveillance at key locations, infiltrated Garrison's digital communications, and gradually built a comprehensive picture of his corruption network. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. While reviewing court transcripts from one of Garrison's controversial rulings, Teresa discovered a pattern of interactions with a court reporter named Elaine Matthews. She's present for all his sensitive cases, Teresa explained. Always the same reporter, even when it requires schedule adjustments. Further investigation revealed Matthews had purchased a vacation home in the Bahamas despite a modest salary. Her phone records showed regular calls to Garrison outside court hours. She's his insurance policy, Drake realized. Court reporters control the official record. If testimony needed to be altered, she could make it happen, Teresa finished. Subtle changes that help his preferred outcomes appear legitimate. Drake formulated a plan focusing on Matthews rather than Garrison directly. Kyle established surveillance on the court reporter, documenting meetings with Garrison outside professional contexts. Martin accessed her financial records, finding payments from the same shell companies linked to Garrison. Claire Winters provided crucial inside information: court schedules, case details, building access, while maintaining plausible deniability about Drake's methods. 3 months into the operation, they had assembled comprehensive evidence of Garrison's corruption network, including recorded conversations between the judge and Matthews discussing altered transcripts. "We're ready," Drake announced during a team meeting. "Time to execute." Unlike the Reed case, where Drake had been personally involved and publicly visible, the Garrison operation remained completely covert. Evidence was anonymously delivered to multiple authorities simultaneously: the Pennsylvania Judicial Conduct Board, the FBI, and 3 trusted journalists. The evidence was structured to trigger official investigations that would independently discover additional proof, creating a legitimate path to prosecution that couldn't be traced back to Drake or his team. 2 weeks later, the headline appeared: Superior Court Judge under federal investigation for corruption, evidence tampering. Garrison was suspended pending investigation. Matthews, confronted with evidence of her complicity, agreed to cooperate in exchange for leniency. Additional participants in the corruption scheme began turning on each other, accelerating the case's collapse. Drake watched the news coverage with satisfaction, noting that his name appeared nowhere. Claire Winters was quoted extensively as the prosecutor who had persistently pursued justice despite institutional obstacles. Agent Rivera called that evening. "Impressive work in Harrisburg. Clean. Untraceable." "I have no idea what you're talking about," Drake replied mildly. "Of course not," Rivera acknowledged. "Hypothetically speaking, though, well done." "Hypothetically," Drake agreed. Justice was served. Indeed, and Claire Winters is receiving well-deserved recognition for her persistence. Drake smiled slightly. As it should be. She's the one working within the system, while others work adjacent to it, Rivera observed. An effective partnership model. After the call, Drake contemplated his evolving role. What had begun as personal vengeance against the Reeds had transformed into something more systematic, a method for addressing corrupted justice when conventional approaches failed. He wasn't naive about the moral complexities. His methods operated outside legal boundaries: surveillance without warrants, accessing protected information, pressuring witnesses. Yet the alternatives, allowing corrupt officials to continue destroying lives with impunity, seemed far worse. Drake had found his true purpose, not in running restaurants, though he maintained that public identity meticulously, but in restoring balance to a system that sometimes protected the powerful at the expense of justice. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was restoration. Chapter 9. The Equilibrium. 3 years after Norman Reed's conviction, Drake Sullivan had established a new normal. Sullivan's Grill had expanded to 5 locations across Pennsylvania, building a reputation for exceptional food and service. Drake himself had become a respected figure in Philadelphia's business community, supporting charities, mentoring young entrepreneurs, even speaking occasionally at culinary schools. This public persona existed in perfect parallel with his other work: the methodical identification and exposure of corruption within the justice system. Working with a network that now included Claire Winters, Agent Rivera, and others who shared his commitment to accountability, Drake had helped bring down 17 corrupt officials across the Northeast. Each case followed a similar pattern: identify systemic failures allowing corruption to flourish, gather evidence through methods unavailable to conventional law enforcement, deliver that evidence through channels that establish legitimate investigative paths, then step back as official processes took over. Drake maintained strict operational security. His team, Kyle, Teresa, Martin, and others recruited for specific skills, operated with military precision and discipline. No evidence led back to them. No patterns emerged that might attract unwanted attention, until Senator Maxwell Carter arrived in Philadelphia. Carter, a rising political star with presidential ambitions, had begun his career as a protege of Norman Reed before carefully distancing himself when Reed's crimes came to light. Now, 3 years later, he had returned to Philadelphia for a fundraising dinner at the Bellinis. Drake watched the coverage from his office above the original Sullivan's Grill. Carter's speech emphasized justice reform. Ironic, given his connections to Reed and others Drake had helped expose. Antonio Dominguez called shortly after the broadcast. "Did you see Carter in my restaurant? The hypocrisy is breathtaking." "I saw," Drake confirmed. "How did he seem?" "Confident, entitled, surrounded by the same type of people who used to accompany Reed." Antonio paused. "Drake, he asked about you." Drake tensed slightly. "What did he want to know?" "How you were doing. Whether you still came to Bellini's." Casual questions, but his interest seemed significant. "Interesting," Drake mused. "Keep me informed if he returns." After disconnecting, Drake initiated standard security protocols, checking for surveillance, reviewing recent communications for compromise, assessing potential vulnerabilities. Teresa arrived an hour later, concern evident in her expression. "We have a situation. Carter's been making inquiries about you through various channels, official and unofficial." "What kind of inquiries?" "Background checks beyond the standard political vetting, military records, financial investigations. He's even had people interviewing your former neighbors from when you were married to Vanessa." Drake considered this development. "He suspects something." "More than suspects," Teresa corrected. "According to my sources, Carter has a theory that you were behind Reed's downfall, that you've been systematically targeting his former associates and allies." "Which is true," Drake acknowledged. "Yes, but he shouldn't have enough information to make that connection." Teresa looked troubled. "Someone's been talking, Drake." Drake nodded thoughtfully. "Or Carter is smarter than we've given him credit for. He was Reed's protege for years. He would have observed Reed's methods, connections, vulnerabilities. What's our move?" "For now, we watch and wait. Increase surveillance on Carter. Review all our past operations for potential leaks or patterns." Drake maintained his normal schedule in the days that followed, though with heightened awareness of his surroundings. Nothing in his public behavior changed, but privately, he accelerated contingency planning in case Carter posed a genuine threat. A week later, the senator made a direct approach. Drake was closing Sullivan's grill when a sleek black car pulled up outside. Senator Maxwell Carter emerged alone, a calculated move showing confidence. "Mr. Sullivan," Carter greeted him with a practiced politician's smile. "I was hoping we might speak privately." Drake maintained a neutral expression. "Senator Carter, this is unexpected, is it?" Carter's smile remained fixed. "I've been wanting to meet you properly for some time." Drake considered his options briefly before gesturing to the door. "Please come in. Can I offer you something to drink?" "Scotch, if you have it," Carter replied, following Drake inside the darkened restaurant. Drake led him to the bar, pouring 2 glasses of single malt. They studied each other in silence for a moment, 2 men assessing potential threats. Carter spoke first. "You've built quite a success story here. 5 restaurants in 3 years. Impressive recovery after what the Reeds put you through." "Thank you," Drake replied simply. "Hard work and persistence pay off." "Indeed they do." Carter sipped his scotch. "You know, Norman Reed was a mentor to me once. Taught me a great deal about how power really functions in our system." "I imagine he did." Carter's smile tightened slightly. "He also taught me to recognize patterns, to identify threats that others might miss. An important skill in politics," Drake observed. "In many fields," Carter countered. "For instance, I've noticed an interesting pattern over the past 3 years. People connected to Norman Reed, judges, prosecutors, police officials he worked with, have been systematically exposed and removed from office." Drake maintained an expression of polite interest. "Justice catching up with corruption. That seems like positive progress." "It does," Carter agreed, "except for the unusual consistency in how these cases unfold. Evidence appears through anonymous sources. Digital trails that shouldn't exist are suddenly discovered. Witnesses find courage at precisely the right moments. The justice system working as it should," Drake suggested. Carter laughed softly. "We both know the system doesn't work that efficiently on its own. Someone has been helping it along." Drake set down his glass. "Why are you telling me this, Senator?" "Because I believe that someone is you, Mr. Sullivan." Carter's smile vanished, his expression now intensely focused. "I believe you orchestrated Norman Reed's downfall, then continued systematically dismantling his network of allies and associates." "That's quite a theory," Drake replied evenly. "A restaurateur taking down corrupt officials across multiple states? Sounds more like a television plot than reality. A restaurateur with 8 years of special operations experience, with documented expertise in intelligence gathering and psychological warfare." Carter leaned forward. "With a proven motive for vengeance against Norman Reed and everyone connected to him." Drake maintained his composure. "Even if your theory were true, why approach me directly? Surely that would be unwise." "Because I'm not here to threaten you, Mr. Sullivan." Carter's voice lowered. "I'm here to hire you." Drake couldn't entirely hide his surprise. "Excuse me. Your methods, hypothetically speaking, are exactly what I need," Carter explained. "I'm pursuing anti-corruption legislation that powerful people want to block. People with the same kind of influence and immunity that Reed once enjoyed." "And you want what exactly?" "Evidence," Carter stated simply. "Evidence that would expose their corruption and eliminate their opposition to my bill. Evidence that my position prevents me from gathering through conventional means." Drake studied the senator carefully, looking for deception. "Why should I believe you? You were Reed's protege." "I was," Carter acknowledged, "until I discovered what he really was. Reed introduced me to people I now know were criminal associates. He tried to draw me into his corruption network gradually, testing my willingness to compromise." "And you refused?" Drake asked skeptically. "I played along while quietly documenting everything," Carter corrected. "I was preparing to take evidence to federal authorities when you accelerated the timeline by exposing Reed yourself." Drake neither confirmed nor denied the assertion. "Let's say I believe you. What exactly are you proposing?" "A partnership of sorts," Carter explained. "I can provide access, information, and protection that would enhance your hypothetical activities." In exchange, you help me expose specific corruption targets related to my legislation. Risky for both parties, Drake observed. High risk, high reward, Carter agreed. But necessary if we want real change. Drake considered the proposal carefully. I'll need time to think about this. Of course, Carter stood to leave. Take all the time you need. But know that my offer is sincere. After Carter departed, Drake immediately contacted his team, implementing full security protocols and initiating a comprehensive investigation into the senator's background, connections, and activities. For the next 2 weeks, Drake's network gathered information on Maxwell Carter, his voting record, financial affairs, private communications, associations, and personal history. The picture that emerged was complex but consistent. Carter appeared to be genuinely pursuing anti-corruption reforms, often against powerful interests within his own party. His legislation would establish an independent oversight commission with real enforcement power, Teresa reported during a secure meeting. It's genuinely threatening to entrenched corruption networks. And the opposition? Drake asked. Significant, Kyle confirmed. 3 senators and 7 representatives are actively working to kill the bill. All have suspicious financial patterns consistent with bribery. Martin presented digital evidence. Carter's private communications match his public positions. He's been building this anti-corruption initiative for years, even before Reed's downfall. Drake processed this information thoughtfully, so his approach to me appears legitimate. He wants ammunition against the officials blocking his reforms. It aligns with our objectives, Teresa acknowledged. But partnering directly with a sitting senator exponentially increases our risk exposure. True, Drake agreed. But it also dramatically expands our capabilities and impact. After careful consideration, Drake arranged to meet Carter again, this time in the secure room beneath Sullivan's Grill. The senator appeared impressed by the sophisticated command center hidden beneath the restaurant. Quite an operation for a restaurateur, Carter observed. Purely hypothetical. Drake reminded him with a slight smile. I've considered your proposal, Senator. Before we discuss it further, I need to be absolutely clear about something. Go ahead. If this is some elaborate trap, if you're attempting to gather evidence against me or my team, it won't end well for you. Drake's tone was calm, but left no doubt about the seriousness of his warning. I've taken precautions ensuring that if anything happens to me or my people, everything I know about everyone, including you, becomes public immediately. Carter nodded soberly. Understood, and I'd expect nothing less. But this isn't a trap, Drake. It's an opportunity for us both to do more good than either could accomplish alone. Drake studied the senator carefully before making his decision. Very well. Let's discuss terms. Their alliance began cautiously, with limited information sharing and clearly defined boundaries. Carter provided intelligence on corruption within the congressional committees opposing his legislation. Drake's team verified this information independently before acting on it. Their first joint operation targeted Senator William Henderson of Ohio, the most vocal opponent of Carter's anti-corruption bill. Drake's team uncovered evidence that Henderson had received millions in bribes from companies that would be affected by the proposed reforms. The evidence was carefully structured to protect both Drake and Carter, delivered through channels that couldn't be traced back to either of them. When Henderson was indicted 2 months later, Carter's legislation gained crucial momentum. Similar operations followed against other corrupt officials blocking the reforms. Each success strengthened trust between Drake and Carter, gradually expanding the scope of their cooperation. 1 year into their partnership, Carter's anti-corruption bill passed Congress and was signed into law, establishing an independent commission with genuine authority to investigate officials regardless of political connections. Drake watched the signing ceremony on television, feeling a rare sense of systemic achievement rather than just individual justice. His personal vendetta against the Reeds had evolved into something far more significant: structural reform that would prevent others from abusing power with impunity. That evening, Carter visited Sullivan's Grill to celebrate privately with Drake and his core team. "We actually did it," Carter said, raising his glass. "Real reform with real teeth." Something Norman Reed and his kind would have thought impossible. It's a start, Drake acknowledged. The commission will face resistance, attempts to undermine its authority. Which is why our work continues, Carter agreed. The law provides tools, but people still need to use them effectively. Drake nodded thoughtfully. My team has compiled files on 37 additional officials with corruption patterns similar to those we've already exposed. Judges, prosecutors, legislators across 12 states. Ambitious, Carter observed. And necessary. Kyle raised his glass. To justice without shortcuts or mercy, he said. And to the man who reminded us all that some predators become prey. Drake accepted the toast with a slight nod, but his mind was already turning to the work ahead. The celebration was deserved but brief. There would always be more corrupt officials who believed themselves untouchable, more systems failing those they were designed to protect. After the others departed, Carter lingered, studying Drake with newfound appreciation. When I first approached you, I thought I understood what drives you, Carter admitted. Revenge against the Reeds. But it's more than that, isn't it? Drake considered the question. It started as revenge, he acknowledged. But it became something else. A recognition that power without accountability corrupts absolutely. And you've appointed yourself that accountability? Someone has to be, Drake replied simply. The system tries, but it has limitations, legal constraints, political pressures, institutional loyalties. Carter nodded thoughtfully. A necessary shadow to balance the light. Just be careful you don't become what you're fighting against. That's why I have people I trust, Drake explained. Teresa, Kyle Martin. They keep me grounded. They'd stop me if I crossed certain lines. Good, Carter said, rising to leave. Because I've seen what happens when men decide they're above all constraints. It never ends well. 2 weeks later, Drake received an unexpected communication, a request for a prison visit from Vanessa. 5 years into her 10-year sentence, she had maintained complete silence until now. Drake debated ignoring the request entirely. Vanessa had betrayed him completely, participated in criminal activities that had cost lives, and shown no remorse until her own freedom was at stake. She deserved nothing from him. Yet curiosity prevailed. What could she possibly want after all this time? The Federal Women's Correctional Facility was a 3-hour drive from Philadelphia. Drake arrived precisely on schedule, surrendering his personal items and following a guard through security checkpoints to the visitation area. Vanessa was already seated at a small table. Prison had changed her physically. She was thinner, her once perfect hair now simply functional, her designer clothes replaced by a standard-issue uniform. But the most striking change was in her eyes, which had lost their entitlement and confidence. Drake, she said as he sat across from her. Thank you for coming. Drake said nothing, simply waiting for her to explain the purpose of this meeting. Vanessa fidgeted under his steady gaze. I've had a lot of time to think in here. About what I did. About who I was. And Drake prompted when she fell silent. And I wanted to apologize, she said, her voice small. Not because it changes anything, but because it needs to be said. I was wrong about everything. The way I treated you, the things I did with my father and Brendan. Drake studied her, searching for the manipulation beneath the contrition. Why now, Vanessa? 5 years of silence. Then suddenly you want absolution. Not absolution, she corrected. I know better than to expect that from you. She hesitated. I needed you to know that I understand now. What my family was. What I became part of. You always understood, Drake countered coldly. You made your choices consciously. You brought food to a man your father was torturing. You helped cover up his murder. Vanessa flinched. Yes, I did those things. I can't change that history. Then what do you want from me? She met his eyes directly. Information. About my mother. No one will tell me anything in here, but I've heard rumors that she left the country, changed her name. Drake nodded slightly. Gloria relocated to New Zealand after your father's conviction. She legally changed her name and has no contact with anyone from her past life. Is she okay? Vanessa asked hesitantly. She's rebuilt her life, Drake replied. She works with domestic violence victims now. A form of atonement, I suppose. Vanessa absorbed this, a complex mixture of emotions crossing her face. Any others? Brendan? Philip? Brendan is serving his sentence in maximum security after attempting to bribe guards at his previous facility. Your brother Philip was released last year after completing his reduced sentence. He works at a warehouse in Oregon under his mother's maiden name. You keep track of all of them, Vanessa observed. I keep track of potential threats, Drake corrected. Vanessa nodded in understanding. And that's how you see me too. A potential threat to be monitored. Are you suggesting you're something else? No, she admitted. I forfeited any other role in your life years ago. She hesitated. There's one more thing I wanted to tell you. I'm eligible for parole next year. If granted, I'll be relocating to California. You'll never have to see me again. Drake studied her with clinical detachment. Is that supposed to reassure me? It's just information, Vanessa replied. I thought you might want to know. I already knew, Drake said. I know everything about your case, Vanessa. Your behavior reports, your therapy sessions, your parole prospects. She looked momentarily startled, then resigned. Of course you do. You've always been 3 steps ahead. She hesitated. Are you going to oppose my parole? Drake considered the question. 5 years earlier, he would have done everything in his power to ensure Vanessa remained in prison for a full sentence. Yet now, with his focus on broader systemic corruption, she seemed almost irrelevant, a footnote rather than a continuing threat. No, he decided, your actions will determine your fate. If the parole board believes you've reformed, that's their judgment to make. Relief washed across Vanessa's face. Thank you. Don't thank me, Drake replied, rising to leave. I'm not doing it for you. The resources required to block your parole are better spent on more significant targets. Vanessa looked up at him, her expression a mixture of resignation and understanding. You never forgave me, did you? Not even a little. Drake paused, considering her question with genuine reflection. Forgiveness requires trust in redemption, Vanessa. I don't trust you. I never will again. Fair enough, she accepted. For what it's worth, I hope you find peace, Drake. I'm not looking for peace, he replied. I found purpose. That's enough. As Drake left the prison, he felt no closure, no catharsis from the encounter, just a clinical confirmation that Vanessa Reed Sullivan no longer held any emotional power over him. She was simply one more corrupt individual who had faced consequences for her actions. His phone buzzed with a message from Teresa. New information on Judge Lawrence Baxter, Third Circuit. Pattern of dismissed cases matching financial deposits. Preliminary evidence ready for review. Drake smiled slightly. The work continued. 6 months later, Drake stood on the balcony of his penthouse apartment overlooking Philadelphia. The city lights glittered below, a visualization of the complex web of power, corruption, and occasional justice that defined urban life. Sullivan's Grill had expanded to 7 locations across 3 states. His reputation as a successful restaurateur and businessman was firmly established, providing the perfect cover for his other activities. His network had grown as well. Beyond his core team, Drake now had connections within the FBI, judicial system, financial sector, and political sphere. People like Agent Rivera, Claire Winters, and Senator Carter, who recognized that sometimes justice required working outside conventional limitations. These allies brought him cases, situations where corruption seemed poised to prevail over accountability. Drake evaluated each carefully, accepting only those where the evidence of wrongdoing was clear and conventional remedies had failed. His methods remained meticulous, leaving no traces that could threaten his operation. The powerful individuals exposed through his efforts never saw the shadow hand guiding their downfall. Only the legitimate investigations and judicial processes that ultimately held them accountable. Drake's secure phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Senator Carter. New development. Supreme Court Justice Layton implicated in bribery scheme. Evidence compromised by federal agents. Requires immediate intervention. A Supreme Court justice. The highest level target they had ever considered. The risks would be exponential. The security surrounding such a figure nearly impenetrable. The consequences of failure catastrophic. Drake smiled slightly as he typed his response. Send everything you have. We begin tonight. The man who had once been content as a restaurateur, trying to please his wife's family, had evolved into something else entirely. An architect of justice operating in the shadows between legal constraints and moral imperatives. Not a vigilante seeking personal vengeance, but methodical force ensuring that no one, regardless of power or position, remained beyond accountability. Drake Sullivan had found his true calling. The betrayal intended to destroy him had instead transformed him, revealing his capacity to balance scales that institutional justice sometimes couldn't reach. As he turned back to his apartment, the lights of Philadelphia glittering below, Drake reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The Reeds had miscalculated fatally when they invited him into their world, believing him weak and malleable. They had never understood that some men cannot be broken, only transformed. They had intended to make him a victim. Instead, they had created their reckoning. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.